stream if something didn't go wrong. All right. Fantastic. All right. We are live and I can see people joining. All right, let's see. I can tell we're definitely live on YouTube. I haven't seen anyone join from our Facebook group yet, so maybe the pipes just have to warm up a little bit. Hey everybody, Beth from AutoCrit here. Drop us a chat or a comment and let us know where you're joining us from.
Let us know you're alive.
Let us know you're alive. I trust Gareth, our resident horror expert, to take it a little dark there. I've been trying to get out of the way of
life. We need proof of life
here. I mean, to give us proof of life, I'm going to need people holding up some sort of newspaper pointing at the finally thawed in Texas. Oh, that's great. You know, they just had, oh, good morning, Seattle, Washington State, Isle of Wight, New Hampshire. I love doing these, Gareth, because we are just so worldwide and loving it. So, good morning. Hey, a few people from Seattle, and this never fails either. I'll see two people from Seattle and think they should be friends.
It's like assuming everybody lives in a small town. Do you know each other?
Oh my goodness, I wonder if they're already friends. If not, they should definitely meet for coffee and they can talk about writing and editing and it'll be so much fun. Apparently that's not how the world works. Well, in today's world, maybe not even able to meet for coffee, but I love it. I love it. And I feel the same way when I see people. I'm in the Atlanta area. So if I see anybody from the Atlanta area, I'm like, where are you? Oh, what's your favorite grocery near you? Have you been to XYZ? You know, so that's not how it goes. Oh, wow. Liz is here from Scotland. Oh, Lynn's finally thawed out in Galveston. I'm so happy to hear our Texas fans joining us. So thank goodness.
Good to hear, Lynn. I hope everything in Texas is good.
Absolutely.
We're getting better at least.
It's been a tough one. Just unimaginable. So we are glad you're here. We're glad you're safe and hopefully cozy, warm, nice and dry. No more snow, wind, rain, hail, whatever you've got. It's a gorgeous sunny day here. So we are ready to dive in for Deep Dive Live. Beth here from AutoCrit along with Gareth. Say hello, Gareth.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Today, we are going to talk about the 7 plots that every writer should know. And the way we came up with this is we have a great blog post on it, and it's one of our most popular ones. We don't promote it or share it very often, but people just seem to find it and love it. So we thought, why not bring a little life to it and talk live about the 7 plots every writer should know. So we all know, as writers, stories come in all shapes, sizes, genre, fantasy epics, murder mysteries, romance, horror romance blends, globetrotting adventures, corporate espionage, thrillers, you name it, right? Oh, did I forget your favorite, Gareth? Horror, gruesome horror. But at their core, the stories really almost always fit into one of these 7 archetypes. So what we're going to do today is go through each of those, talk a little bit about them. But first, I'd love to hear, this is a quiz, like naming the 7 dwarves, who can name the 7 plots already, just out of their head? No Googling.
Google forbidden.
Google forbidden. It's like this might be the new version of pub trivia. Is you just come online in Deep Dive Live with AutoCrit and we pelt you with questions and we don't allow you to use Google for it. But
yeah, phones away.
Phones away. Who can, unless you're joining us from your phone, and then please don't. Who can name? Any number, any of the 7 major archetypes, 7 different archetypes, or 7 plots, 7 stories in the world.
And we can give you a tip because these are as defined by Christopher Booker.
So Christopher Booker has so we can use Bing. I like you're looking for a loophole, Maz. That's excellent. Um, I think Stephen Booker has an entire book that really digs into these. So as much as we're doing a deep dive live, Stephen Booker's book, 7 Basic Plots, Why We Tell Stories, really does a deep, deep submarine type dive into these 7 story archetypes. And I see some great guesses coming in from the audience. I also see a lot of people saying, no, I can't do that. I can't name all 7. Just please tell me yes. So quest, romance, hero's journey.
Larry nailed one.
Yep.
And Maz, the hero's journey kind of fits in there. Yeah, into a couple of them. Yeah. JB. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. So it sounds like we're going to have some fun new information. So, and a lot of things may just have a different name. You think of them as a different title, but I'm going to jump in with the very first one, although I kind of wonder if I should let Gareth do this one. Gareth, our resident horror expert. The first one, and these are in no particular order, Overcoming the Monster. Now, it doesn't have to be a literal monster, although, we celebrate beasts and tentacles and dripping fangs, all the things about monsters, but it could actually just be an opposing evil force. So it could be an evil corporation, it could be global warming, it could be government, it could be kind of any nefarious opposition. And then the journey is that they're overcoming this, and there's the big battle, and that sets your tension and your core conflict. The hero is often dragged into the story through that inciting incident or the call to adventure. In this case, it would be an inciting incident that really pits them, just puts them head to head with whatever that monster is, and they have to defeat them. So overcoming the monster, that head to head. I kind of want to think about this as a good versus evil. Does that fit, Gareth?
Yeah. I think there's a sense of the good versus evil thematically underpinning a whole lot. I think pretty much every one of these as well. It's true. Sense. It's true. It's not the overall structure, but there's always, I think most stories are about somebody facing something that could, from some perspective, be seen as evil.
Absolutely. So the second one we want to talk about today, and you can guess this one from the title, Rags to Riches.
Everyone's dream.
I would love to, they say, write about what you know. I would love to experience this and then write about it. I often say, hey, I just need the chance to prove that winning the lottery and being obscenely wealthy wouldn't ruin me. I'd still be such a good person. I just need to be given the opportunity to prove that. But you can guess from this label, Rags to Riches is truly about a poor derelict protagonist. They somehow managed to go from not having to a having, right? The haves and the have-nots. In a dramatic sense, they'll often lose something that's important to them along the way as part of that journey, which is what really brings in the tension and conflict in that story and adds more emotional depth to it. Otherwise, it would just be like, well, it'd be a very short story. It would be Bob bought a lottery ticket. He won. Now he's rich. So thinking about adding that tension and that depth, having them lose something along the way. You can even have them get it back at the end, and that's completely fine. But the story of coming from nothing, derelict, destitute, whatever you want to call it, to great wealth, rags to riches, classic story archetype there. So, do we have questions so far? If you have questions, pop them in the chat. Let us know. We're happy to answer them as we go along.
Yeah, because there are some nuances as well. For example, like Beth said there, the rags to riches, kind of going from not having to having. Rags to riches isn't necessarily winning the lottery. It's not necessarily wealth. It could be love. Find it, and then
totally riches.
You'll generally find in those in those kind of love stories that there is that point towards the end where it looks like they've lost the relationship, and then they come back in the end, and everybody's happy.
Mm-hmm. And I'm so glad you mentioned love, Gareth, because it's true. While I took the easy way out with this example and gave the money example, it doesn't have to be money. It could be you're poor in family, you're poor in, satisfaction, or you're poor in friendship or whatever. And then coming into that riches, any place where you start with the lack of something, a void, and then you fulfill that, and your protagonist or your hero or your whatever is better off for it. They're happier. Their world has changed in these wonderful, amazing ways. Absolutely. Absolutely. I like Bob's add on to that, looking for a rich widow. So maybe a sequel.
Get them both. Yeah. Cinderella is quite a good example. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Speaking of the search for rich widows, could fall into the quest.
The quest. Before we say anything about the quest, this is one I do want to take a guess, everybody, at a title that you think might fit into the quest.
Oh, the one that
I just want to see if it comes straight to mind.
Yes, absolutely. I can't wait. Because it is such a evocative word, even quest, that there are just some classic stories and films even that come to mind when you think about quests. So let us know in the comments if you're joining us here live. Of course, if you're watching the replay, you can also make a comment.
There it is.
JB, yeah, Maz, yep. Wow, did anybody not guess it? Yes. Oh, other great ones as well. So things like Treasure Island, National Treasure, the Lord of the Rings, is just the one that comes to mind immediately for me. It's quintessential quest. Yes. Oh, Raiders of the Lost Ark, good one. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, Raiders of the Lost Ark, good one as well. So basically, with the quest, our hero or our heroes, they set out on a long journey to literally retrieve something or fulfill a single objective that's at the end of this big journey. And along the way, they meet and overcome, these various obstacles that get in their way on that straight path to one defined goal. And Lord of the Rings, it just comes straight to mind.
Absolutely.
You're not allowed to say the film The Quest starring Jean-Claude Van Damme, because that's cheating.
Yes. So, and Maz had a quick comment on the rags to riches. Cinderella is a good example of rags to riches. Yes, absolutely. In both cases, you're exactly right. She was poor of love and family and of material wealth. And by the end, she is definitely rich with all of those things. So great point.
And I think just before we mention the next one, because somebody did mention, a couple of people there, The Hobbit.
Yes.
We got Laura and JM. The next one that we have, number 4, is The Voyage and Return. And this one, it feels quite a lot like The Quest, but doesn't necessarily align exactly with it. So in Voyage and Return, there doesn't actually have to be a sort of something, a defined thing that the protagonist is questing for. The key to this one really is that your protagonist or your protagonists are kind of taken away from the life and the world that they know, and then they go and journey through new worlds, new lands, and in the end come back changed, more enlightened, which is kind of like The Hobbit versus Lord of the Rings. And it's also the basis for a lot of coming of age stories. It's this opening up into a wider world, somewhere different, the world changes, and they come back a stronger person. So Voyage and Return.
I love that. I also love that these story types, although we may have known them under other labels, are very recognizable, and our participants today, our viewers today, are nailing it with these examples. Perfect. And so I'm going to let them continue on. Rebirth. Guessing from the title of this story archetype, what comes to mind for you, for me, and for Gareth as well? One story that's just an absolute classic, and of course there are multiple film adaptations, really comes to mind for Rebirth. Let us know in the comments. Sorry, my assistant just showed up for work, so it might be a little, might have a little background noise here. Laura guesses Lassie come home as the voyage and return. Probably a very good one as well. For rebirth, let's see what you can guess. Also, kind of what that phrase entails. Success diet, stars born. Larry nailed it. It is Christmas Carol for me. So Scrooge, Wonderful Life, all of those things. The Wonderful Life definitely fits into this as well. Scrooge from A Christmas Carol, quintessential, just the model of someone who finds themselves transformed and redeemed by the end of the story. He started out evil. He really has had a massive change of heart. The Grinch, also falls into this. So rebirth, classic story archetype of kind of redeeming themselves and personal growth and internal change, etc.
Yeah, there's I think things like Groundhog Day fall into that as well, where you have the characters kind of stuck in this loop until they do something right that changes them, and then the rebirth gets them out of the pickle. And I think you can probably do rebirth backwards as well. I'm not sure if that's quite the same, but mostly rebirth would be seen as somebody who's got negative traits, overcomes those negative traits, and is reborn as a better person. But you might perhaps switch it around where someone enters in a relatively mild state, and by the end they are twisted, bitter, and horrid.
So 2 to go. Who has guesses as to what these final 2 are? I think I saw them in the chat earlier as well. I know I saw one of them. So let's move to comedy. And that was not the one that I saw. So still an opportunity. I know. I just could we be more obvious? Is this the worst foreshadowing you've ever seen, Gareth? If you can be honest with me.
No, I've seen worse.
The last one. So tell us a little bit about comedy, Gareth, because it's interesting how horror may relate to this, and I would love to get your take on it.
Yeah, our last 2. Well, I mean, genre stuff we'll get into as well, as kind of how it can pepper everything. But I think horror is very, very closely tied to comedy. And comedy is
blows my mind. It blows my mind. So, yes,
comedy is quite a broad topic to think of. These last 2 are both, because they're, I mean, all the ones we've gone through so far, like The Quest, Rags to Riches, Overcoming the Monster, they give you an idea of what the story framework is going to be. But these last 2 don't really. Comedy, anyway, it's kind of all about subversion of expectations. Comedy takes what you think is going to happen in the context of the story's world, which in a way is also informed by your own view of the world, and then turns that upside down to make you laugh. The best kind of jokes, the best comedy uses your expectations against you. So it eases you in by agreeing with you, and then all of a sudden turns it around and fires it back at you in a way that makes you laugh. So comedy can be subtle, gloriously absurd, just really silly stuff, but it's always about things going wrong. People make odd choices or find themselves in odd circumstances that are kind of against the norm or almost parallel to the norm, all with the goal of turning that all upside down, which is why I think horror aligns really quite closely with it, because they can easily fit into the comedy archetype, except they don't aim for amusement. Instead of making you laugh, they're trying to make you feel uncomfortable or anxious, is what they do. But they're both taking your expectations of reality and then flipping them around on you.
Yes, that subversion of expectation, and as Margie mentioned in the comments, horror is surreal, and comedy has to do this to be effective. So does horror. It seems counterintuitive, but it fits so well. It's just amazing. Kim has a great question in our comments as well. Can a novel combine several different story plots? So we're talking 7 plots everybody should know. And I think her example is, for example, can a life that evolves from one mindset to another, so the redemption, can we merge that with a quest or with a voyage and return? I think
yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Gareth.
Well, most should. to some degree. When you're talking about something about the changing from one, a character evolving from one mindset to another, that is an intrinsically key point of good storytelling anyway. If you're writing a quest or a voyage and return, the character should always return from that changed from their experiences. They've learned new things about the world. Things are different for them. Perhaps they've saved it and now they're a true hero in everybody's eyes. There's all different ways you can work with that. But of course, the character shouldn't just be a flat line from the start to the end of they never learn anything and never change and never decide to tackle things from a different angle that they realize they've been wrong about before. That doesn't make for interesting characters. They have to be alive in that sense. But so yes, they can all nestle within each other. But I think ultimately one will tend to rule the day as the overall kind of box that you're working with, and then these other things will be in there as smaller elements. So of course a character is supposed to change over the course of a story, but if the focus of the story is them changing into a different person, then it's a rebirth, as opposed to a voyage, even though they can go places.
Otherwise they would just be sitting in their house, as many of us have been doing lately, and then they've changed. But where does the conflict come in? Where are they overcoming? Are they in the pit and climbing out? How are they doing that without having some sort of journey? So yes, interesting. And I completely agree with Gareth on this one as well. The fundamental change in your characters and the growth from the beginning to the end of your story should be a focus of all our writing. Otherwise, it's just not that interesting to think about. So overcoming something, having conflict, how have they changed? What does when they emerge out of the pit, as our friend Daniel with his plot theories, when they emerge out of that pit, how are they changed? How is not just their physical world may be different, but how is their emotional world and their mind view, their worldview inside their mind different? How have they changed? So I think
Lynn in the comments is quite right. It says telling a joke is different than writing something funny. So with live humor, you have vocal and physical expression that are hard to get across in writing, and a joke can last just seconds. 100%. It's probably why I think writing a comedy novel is really, really tough. In that format, most of the time the laughs will come in such a format through the characters, dialogue, action, what they do, things like that. You can't actually really write jokes down in that way because the delivery won't always come across, in the way you would say in a joke book or something. Which is probably why most of the most famous or most successful comedic writings are plays.
Good point.
You have things like is it Midsummer's Night's Dream, Shakespeare? Some of the most gloriously funny plays.
Oh my goodness.
And again, it's always funny just because people act them out and the different choices. You can go to different theater troupes and see them play it totally differently and still have a great time.
Yes. Inflection, physical, movements, those are so key to getting the laughs. I love that you gave the example of Midsummer Night's Dream because it reads one way, but on a stage it plays completely differently. And each troupe puts their own little bit of a spin on it. Ron has a great question. Can your exterior conflict be a quest and your interior be rebirth? Absolutely. So taking your and you wouldn't have to spell it out so clearly to say like, this is my internal and external conflict, but certainly going on a quest and that quest results in a change to your protagonist, your main character, really absolutely happens. It happens all the time. Sure. So I think everyone can guess what our final story type is. Our final
I thought that was a perfect segue in the comments there. Shakespearean comedy, any non-history play in which the main characters are still alive in the end. And so yes, we come to tragedy.
And so here we are. It is almost the polar opposite of comedy. Do you want to talk a little bit about that for us, Gareth?
Sure. Well, I mean, tragedy is usually kind of, as Beth said, they're the polar opposite of comedy. Where in comedy we'll see people make the wrong decisions, there'll be poor choices and all, but the outcomes aren't really all that bad. They're just there to make you laugh. In a tragedy, we witness the literal undoing of characters, usually through their own poor choices, or it could be, the result of conspiracies against them. It might just be that everything goes wrong, and it seems like the universe is against them. But the key ending really is it isn't positive. I suppose you might expect that horror fits quite nicely in tragedy as well.
Once again,
things
yes.
constantly go wrong.
Right.
And of course, probably my favorite of all of Shakespeare's plays and or tragedies is probably Macbeth. I think it's an absolute masterpiece.
You'll get no argument from me about that. Absolutely. So that brings us to the end of the 7 plots every writer should know, but there's more. Of course. So we've talked about, Chris, the basis of this talk so far has been 7 basic plots, Why We Tell Stories by Christopher Booker. Wonderful, just comprehensive. But there is more. And I'm going to ask Gareth to talk more about a little bit deeper on the Deep Dive Live here.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you look back through those 7 story plots, or 7, I think they call them master plots. They're kind of archetypes that describe the kind of journey that the story is going to take. And while that, I think they're great, it's a really great selection, and it does encompass, because as we could see, everybody in the comments there, I mean, stories just come to mind for each of those straight away. You're like, oh yeah, that's this, because they really are just key to a lot of the storytelling that we do, and that people understand, which is a point we'll get to as well. But the University of Vermont looked a little deeper into it from a linguistic perspective as well, rather than just looking at the sort of overarching story or what events took place. And they came out with 6 basic master plots that were based entirely on the emotional language that they were able to scan all these different types of books for. It's kind of like what we do inside the AutoCrit platform with the Power Words report. If any of you have used that, where you can run it and it'll show you the emotional words that you're using and how that's likely to affect your story. And they came up with 6 other ones. Do you have those loaded up for?
Oh my goodness, I don't. But I can do it real quick. While I'm loading those up, you're going to talk about that a little bit. The hedonometer, people can take a peek at that.
Indeed.
And all those banners on
the university, they took all of their research and they loaded it into, well, compiled it, I suppose, into a thing they called the hedonometer. And that's at the address there on the screen, www.hedonometer.org. And if you head there, there's a database of books already available there, and you can open them up and see their kind of emotional flow chart. It's like if it's lower, then it's negative emotions. If it's higher, then it's obviously more positive emotions. And you can see how the emotional core of the story goes as it flows along. It's really quite interesting.
It is very interesting. And I think you mentioned related, it's very similar to conceptually similar to looking across the words in our Power Words report and looking at the emotions as you travel through the story, which I will show you your first banner there, sir.
Indeed. So they refer to really the positivity and the negativity in the story as either a rise, it means good things, I guess, are happening to the characters, or a fall, negative things happen to the characters. So they define the first one as rags to riches, which is just a straight up rise. Characters going from nothing rises to something. One would argue, I guess I would argue, that in a standard rags to riches, for dramatic effect, you generally always have that moment where they lose it but then get it back again. So there could be a little fall there. I guess they just don't want to be too nitpicky with the way they lay them out. But after rags to riches, we have tragedy, which they also call riches to rags.
Riches to rags.
Just a fall. The opposite of the rise is straight up fall. That's a tragedy.
It is just fall.
The only way is done. After that, they came up with Man in a Hole.
I love this one because it's so inspirational. The name doesn't do it justice in my opinion.
That's a fall followed by a rise. So this is most stories, I would say. Quite frankly, something is suffered in the beginning and then it's overcome. So the man finds his way out of the hole. The hero is successful. And the opposite of that, we have the Icarus. Rise and then fall. Everybody knows Icarus. So this is, I guess, something like Citizen Kane might fit in here. potentially. But yeah, you have somebody starting up top successful, and then they kind of crumble, or they won't necessarily start up top, because then that would probably fall into tragedy, where it's just a fall. So they rise first of all, they get what they're after, but then it all crumbles. I guess Scarface. There you go.
Wait.
Tony Montana flew too close to
absolutely
to a sun filled with narcotics.
Now,
and then the next one has been guessed.
Yeah, we guessed it before. Rise, fall, rise. That rise, fall, rise. If you remember, Cinderella was wealthy. Then, I think her family died. So that, she had a rise, fall, rise. Did I put that in wrong? Rise, fall, rise. Yeah, she was wealthy. She fell.
Yeah, rise, fall, rise.
And she was wealthy again.
So things are good. Things go awfully wrong. And then things get good again.
Exactly. And
finally, the Oedipus, which is just the inverse of the Cinderella. Fall, rise, and fall again. Sounds like Wednesday.
Right, exactly. So yes, a couple of questions coming from the community. Yes, we are recording. It will be available later. So if anyone has to drop off, we're sad to see you go, but absolutely will be available for later. And Gareth, before we move on from these more specific types, can you give a few book examples of overcoming the monster? This seems like it would be right in your wheelhouse. Actual monsters, I think, is what you're able to do easily.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could ream them off with people overcoming actual monsters. I did see the comment there of like pretty much any Stephen King book. Almost, yeah. I mean, there's his recent one, The Outsider, good example of it. It, good example of it. There's all sorts of pulp novels, the kind of stuff I read, which, it's just literal things like Dead Crow or The Worm, just literal monsters that awaken in a town, let's say, and then the heroes have to fight them off. But you could have other novels. I'm not a huge reader of a lot of like legal thrillers, but some of those could be. It was like Beth said earlier, it doesn't necessarily have to be a monster, but it could be a corrupt law firm, and somebody who is being targeted by them has to fight back.
Yeah, John Grisham thrillers come to mind with this a lot for me. And what's the one with the lady with the pollution? No, the water thing. Oh, goodness. I'm drawing a blank here live on Deep Dive Live. So
oh yeah, it's her name, and no, I can't remember because you said it.
Oh, it's my drawing a blank is Contagious. The firm falls into that, certainly. Oh no. And Julia Roberts played her in the movie. Do you know?
Yeah, Petra, Dean Koontz, a lot of his novels, things like that. Phantoms. It's a good one.
Gatsby. Yes. Okay. So just a bit of a different twist when you think about not just the first 7 we went through, which are the 7 plots every writer should know. Very, very broad. If you look at it from a slightly different perspective, from the emotional journey within the story, it's not just a step-by-step plot plan for it's a rise, it's a fall, it's a whatever, but it can have a rise and then a fall and then a rise again. So taking your readers on that emotional journey. Thank you, community. Thank you, Hive Mind. It's Aaron Brockovich. Thank you. That is kind of something that comes to mind when I think about overcoming the monster in a non-horror monster sort of way.
Yeah.
That's the one that halfway comes to mind. Doesn't fully come to mind.
Almost.
Yeah. So it's just fascinating to see whether you subscribe to the 6 that Gareth just went through or the 7 that we went through earlier. Can all stories fit into this? It's truly fascinating that over and over and over throughout humankind, storytelling worldwide and across history generally all fall into one of these 7 plots. It feels like you would not be able to tell a fresh, original, compelling story if there are only 7 plots in the whole world. But that is so not true.
Entirely untrue. I mean, for the hedonometer thing, definitely check that out. If that seems interesting to you, that database is huge, and they have
Oh.
there's like Harry Potter books and all sorts in there, and you can look at it and look at the charts and just see what way it kind of goes there. But I think Beth is 100% right there. I know a lot of people look at like Booker's list of 7 things and immediately recoil. It's like, oh, creativity is so much broader than this, and that can't possibly be true. But between his list and the University of Vermont's list, it feels like they pretty much encompass most of the story frameworks that we work within. And that we intrinsically understand. Again, as I said, the almost immediate reflex action of everybody able to pop in at least one title that fits into each of those kind of ideas without really leaving anything out kind of says that to you. However, even though things may fit in those boxes, you might think that means we would get the same thing over and over and over again, but that's not at all what happens. So if I was writing and overcoming the monster, it could literally be a big monster that's eating half the town, and it's the sheriff is the hero, or it could be the monster is eating half the town, and it's the kids in the town who are the heroes. Totally different story. It could be the monster is eating the kids in the town, and Santa Claus has to stop it. Completely different story. Or there isn't a literal monster at all. As we said, the monster could be a single person. It could be a corporation. It might be an asteroid. I think perhaps Armageddon, that movie with Bruce Willis, is probably an overcoming the monster story because they have to stop this thing. That's it.
Good.
So, that said, that's where things really get deeper on a creative level because all of those are incredibly different. We can talk about differences in setting, in characters, in tone, in almost anything. Again, you could write a tragedy. If I did a tragedy, it could be about a modern day war veteran, losing grip on reality with really bad consequences. Somebody else's tragedy could be about the wife of a Spanish fisherman whose family loses everything. It's still a tragedy. It still fits within that box, but the stories are completely different. It's about different people, different places, different times, different everything, different experiences. So again, they're all different. Rebirth, could be somebody on I guess, part of a totalitarian regime. Let's say it's somebody on the side of the party in 1984 discovers the truth and joins revolutionaries. Your rebirth could be it could be a kid's book, like an angry seagull that learns to share food and stop being so angry with the rest of the seagulls.
Aw, what
really,
a great
really simple things.
All right, team, get on it. I want to see that seagull story.
who does kids books and illustrates?
Boy,
Beth
that
has
would
a
be
custom
wonderful.
contract. And I mean, the possibilities, even if you acknowledge the frameworks, are almost limitless. And the thing is that even though you may look at those and go, well, that's not how it is because, we need to be surprised. We need new stories and all of this kind of thing. Think about it when, if you're reading a Jack Reacher thriller, or I said this in a different stream the other day, I was for the first time watching Godzilla King of the Monsters because I missed it in the cinema. And I sat there watching it and I thought, this is really, really thrilling. But between whether it's Godzilla or Jack Reacher, you go into that story knowing that the character's not going to lose. Unless I guess with some novels that are
right, yeah.
with some novels that are long series, the book would probably be subtitled like the end of Reacher or whatever, so that it's likely to happen. It always gets spoiled beforehand. But even though that they are not going to lose, that they will overcome in the end, the experience is still thrilling. So that's the whole point. As writers, it's up to us to deliver on the surprises, the thrills, the twists and turns, the unexpected events, all the things that make it worthwhile, even though we know, and we have to accept that from a reader or viewer perspective, we know the hero isn't going to die. And, that's not 100% true. I'm not going to say that for everything, especially horror and some thrillers. It's quite I'm not going to say likely, but an open possibility that heroes are going to die.
But
you get what I mean.
Anything written by George R.R. Martin. So.
Yes, eventually they're going to get the chop.
He is his own genre. It's in
So
terms
yeah,
of
this
likelihood
whenever
of character death, very high.
it's one of these big questions that comes about when people are kind of delving into stories and story arcs and how to plot things and all of this. And they say, is it really true that stories only fall into one of these 7 types? And I mean, the answer to that to me is yes, probably. But that doesn't mean that there's nothing new and exciting, around the corner or under the sun. There's always, always going to be fantastic new stories that will grip you beginning to end and keep you excited and keep you thrilled and keep you guessing, even though in your heart you know the hero is not going to lose, because that's not part of the framework.
Exactly. And then there, if you want to go even deeper, it's that reader promise. They have these expectations, and sometimes subverting them can be a little fun when you think about the plot framework, but maybe you're actually using a different framework and didn't even realize it. I've been doing a lot of thinking and work on theme lately, because that's another great way to differentiate your story. We talk about the story frameworks and the plot frameworks here today, but someone mentioned in the comments the characters, settings, who they are, what they're doing, where they're doing it, but then also the theme or the major overarching message that the author wants to get across. That can vary as well. And mixing and matching your theme and your story framework and your character journeys, this is what makes it so much fun and so interesting. The possibilities are truly endless. And if you're thinking about these plots and these archetypes that we've talked about today, they are so familiar and they're so comfortable and they're so comforting to your readers. They're like home. So trying to really go outside of that and still have a satisfying read that hits home emotionally and really carries your reader on a journey, it's highly unlikely. It's unlikely to deliver that satisfying experience that both you and the readers truly want. Now, that doesn't mean, for those of you out there searching for the next big kind of literary experience, keep at it. Don't be, super upset. You're busy trying to come up with that. It just doesn't mean that anything that follows these archetypes has to be cliche or overdone or played out or, a ripoff. There are so many ways to make stories your own and still have that classic framework and structure underneath it that your readers will very, very much enjoy.
Yeah, it's one of these things that I always like to say is never put yourself in a box, and I'm constantly saying that. One of my phrases is "don't be safe," and it's in this situation though. I'm kind of like embrace the box. Probably one of the only boxes to embrace, because you don't want to really fight it. It's like you find you're working along. It's like saying the 3-act structure, or if you use 4, the 4-act structure, or an act structure itself is too limiting for me.
Structure, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
the likely result is something that just it doesn't slip in there with readers as easily as the story structures that we've told since the dawn of time. And things like this, it's like if you're sitting down writing a story and you realize I'm writing a quest, good for you. Write that quest, because it's what's inside that box that matters, and it's what's inside that box that's different. So don't fight it.
Absolutely. Completely agree. All right. How is everyone doing? Do we have any questions out there in the community? We'll keep, Gareth, if you can keep eyes on that for me, I will do a quick plug for, if you enjoyed this show, we have tons more opportunities to interact with us live, fun games, edutainment. I call it accidental learning, sneaky learning. I love it. So ways to have fun, engage, and learn a little bit on the side. AutoCrit.com/live. Find our full calendar of live events, whether it's a game show, whether it's a deep dive live, whether it is the live What's the Score series that Gareth hosts for us. You can check that calendar out, add it to your own personal calendar to get a reminder and a link to join us live. And Gareth, do you want to talk about what's starting on Monday? And I'm going to grab some details. We have a show or two today. I want to grab details on. I want to talk about Monday.
Yeah, I look forward to the shows today. I'll let Beth talk about that in a minute. Speaking of comments, Laura, who was it mentioned the lottery?
Oh, I did see that just go by.
There was a mention. Shirley
Patrick.
Jackson's The Lottery. Yes, just a timeless story. The Lottery is amazing, and I would probably slot it into tragedy, I think. Yeah, you'll always get stories that can be little bits of one and the other, different things happening, as we've said, but I think The Lottery I'd set in the tragedy. However, if you are so inclined, coming on Monday, we have 2 of our courses starting up again. We've just finished a couple of rounds of our sci-fi writing course hosted by Daniel. If you've been on our live shows, you know him and his peppy style. So he's hosting from Monday Beyond Reality, the sci-fi writing course, and that's 4 weeks long with lots and lots to do, lots to learn, lots of writing to get done. And also starting on Monday, I will be hosting another round of Nightmare Fuel, which we just finished the previous one at the end of last week. So we're resetting for that, kicking off again, hopefully getting some more special guests in to talk to everybody who attends. So if you're interested in writing horror, check out the website. I think it's on autocrit.com/nightmare for horror.
Indeed.
And autocrit.com/go beyond for beyond reality. If you're interested in either of those, check them out.
And just a couple of final things. I see a comment. Somebody wants us to show all the 7 again. So I will, after this quick plug, I'll cycle the banners back through so you can see the names of each of those 7 as a quick recap as we sign off. But tonight, we actually have 2 more live shows today. Can you believe this? So tonight we have Pitch It, which was such a massive hit last time. It went way long, but Pitch It is so amazing. It's kind of like Shark Tank in the US, or
Dragon's Den.
Dragon's Den in the UK, if you're familiar with those. But it's about stories. So propose a story, character, and setting, or give us your tagline, logline, blurb. Propose that and see if you earn a read or a pass from our panel. That is tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. Again, you can find the link of how to join live at autocrit.com/live. And we also have Book Blender tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern. So we're trying to make more West Coast friendly opportunities to come and hang out and have some fun with AutoCrit. Book Blender, take different elements of different stories, spin them through a blender. Daniel legitimately has a button that he pushes and makes it stop. And the components that come up are writing prompts, basically. So great fun with Book Blender tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern. Run some elements through a literal blender and see what comes out. So with that, I'm going to quickly run through the banners again of the 7 plots every writer should know. I wish I had background.
Don't be afraid of Pitch It, because it is fairly casual.
So casual.
It's us, of course. It's casual,
right.
But it's an ideal opportunity to work on your pitch. If you are getting ready to actually pitch the book to people, agents or publishers, it's a good time to come in and try that pitch out. So we can give you some feedback on the pitch itself. What you may want to focus on or tweak.
And even if you don't have a book that's fully baked, if you've got story ideas, also good to pitch it and just see, like, where's your pitch it, just pitch it. So see where's your conflict, where's your hurdle, where's your pit, what's going to happen. Running through these last 7, background music playing us out as we wrap up this edition of Deep Dive Live, the 7 plots every writer should know: Overcoming the Monster, Rags to Riches, The Quest, Voyage and Return, Classic Rebirth, and the tried and true comedy and tragedy. That takes us through Deep Dive Live today. Thanks everybody for joining us. We're so excited you could be here. And if you're watching the replay, we're thankful for you as well. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great afternoon, evening, or day.
Oh, Deborah, the 4 p.m. Pacific is the 7 o'clock one, which is Pitch It.
That's correct. That is Pitch It, where you propose a story, character, and setting to our panel and see if you earn a read or a pass or a conditional. It's fun, interactive, and very casual. So don't be intimidated. All right. Hopefully we'll see you again soon on another show of AutoCrit Live. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Keep writing.